Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast. Presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh with MitsuTimes. Today, my guest is Nick from Turbo Parts Canada. How you doing today, Nick?
Hey, what's up, Josh?
Man, I'm so glad that we get a chance to do this. I've been seeing all kinds of talk about your turbos on social media and how well people have been doing. And it looks like old Jason Drew's got a fresh rebuild from you, and he's ready to hit some big numbers this year.
Yeah, Drew has been rocking our old GT spec for, I think, 3 years before this setup, and he's been improving all the time, improving, raising the boost, and so now his competition, like Sebastian and other guys we were talking about earlier, are getting faster, so we just upgraded the compressor wheel from a GT to a GTR, and when he gave her the beans at the end of the season last year, lifted the head, so there's still a lot of potential left in that turbo. He has a O-ring head, so I don't know if the O-ring kind of popped off, but looking forward to see what that's going to do this year. And sure. That one specifically has a 10 centimeter hot side from FP with a 58 mil turbine wheel. And I guess we're going to jump right away and like, what's the future going to hold? I guess for TPC for DSM.
Sure.
We just made a custom turbine shaft. So it's a TD06 shaft with a GT35 head.
Oh, wow.
What that means is it's a 62 mil turbine head. And all 06Hs are 58 mil. So this is the first ever of its kind. And it does fit in all the DSM housings when you machine it. Even fits in the 7 centimeter. Like I had one in my hand this morning. And I don't think we're going to do much with it. But if somebody wants the quick spool with the lower back pressure, then I'm sure it's going to work, but we're going to focus more on the 8 centimeters and 10 centimeters, so we'll be testing that this year. Like Kenny Klein's got one of our turbos too. I think he did an interview with you guys not long ago with just the two.
Love Kenny.
Yeah. So he's been beating on our turbos for a long time as well, and so those two guys are kind of our testers for power and reliability, and they've been proven over and over again. So, yeah.
Heck yeah. I know Jason was talking about his, he's had some reliability issues with turbos in the past, and ever since he got your turbo, he's been completely fine, able to make it through a whole season without replacing a turbo, so that's definitely good news.
And he's not easy on him.
That's for sure. We see his all-wheel drive burnout videos all the time.
Yeah, he does. He's got a solid two-step too. I believe Drew has had great success with reliability with us because of his oil pressure as well. I think people, when they put filters or off the head, the pressure is not there. And with a journal bearing turbo, you need all the pressure. Like people are like, I got to go low on the pressure, blah, blah, blah. Like in a racing application, all the juice, all the sauce. Like the more oil pressure, the tighter the oil film is going to be in the thrust and the bearings, and the more resistance it's going to be. Ball bearing, yes, you need restrictors and whatnot, but journal, you give it all. If, depending on the turbo model, if the street car starts smoking, you can reduce the oil pressure a little bit to play with that. But if you're a guy like Drew or Kenny Klein, you want all the pressure all the time, and you just got to upgrade your drain if it's smoking because of the oil pressure, right? So I just want to emphasize on that. So all the guys out there, just off the oil feed housing, no filter, and just that's the best option.
Yeah, I never see anything good come from those inline oil filters.
Yeah, guys just don't. The micron is so small, and guys don't check them, and then they clog up, and the restrictor. You put a restrictor in there, there's no way to measure the oil pressure after.
Right.
So that's and then the brass and the thrust bearings are just off. As soon as you kiss it once, you over boost and the pressure's not there, then she goes.
Yeah. If you're a serious DSM person, you're still running your oil off the head, shame on you.
Well, not shame, you know what I mean? Depends if you're a street car and this and that. If it's a ball bearing turbo off the head, you're good. Journal bearing, I recommend straight off the housing, and Drew is a perfect example of that.
Awesome. So, Nick, let's dive into the how, when, and why Turbo Parts Canada got started.
So I worked out west on the oil rigs for about 8 years, and I worked with a bunch of diesel guys, and we got into the whole step turbos, playing with those for their trucks. And then I found out the Honda guys liked the whole set as well back then, HX35s, HX40s. Yeah, so I started doing those for them. And then I started, like, there's one time there's a bunch of school buses going to the junkyard. I found the ad on like Kijiji or something, so I went in there, ripped all the. It was a nightmare. Like, I made like no money, but I ripped off all these HX35s and 40s off the school buses and rebuilt them and started selling to the Honda guys, and I got my DSM and messing with that, and like, okay, well, the same things in the Volvo and this and that. And at the time I was working rigs and then construction, so doing that on the side. And yeah, so I started like a U-Haul storage place. So at night I would go there and work on turbos and stuff. Wow. And I'd drive like an hour away to get them balanced and then drive back. And so I was doing that for a year or two, and then I came to Crossroads where I was just so busy I had to pick between my full-time job and this, and I kind of took the risk. I jumped and I had my gut in my my throat per se, and I just made the leap, and I never looked back, kind of thing. And I sold my Talon, actually. I had a super clean freaking 98 Talon. I was second owner, and so I sold it to buy a balancer so I wouldn't have to travel to get the stuff balanced.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was kind of a real heartbreaker. And I got a Volvo. It wasn't too bad. It was like a T5. So I had that. And then I moved in the hood in Ottawa, and I worked out of there for a nice shop. You know, I made the best of it. It's 1,000 square foot. I was there for a couple of years, maxed it out, and then I had to find a bigger spot because now we're doing diesel turbos and for big trucks, ISX and tractors and things like that. So I found a good deal in a bigger space, and now it was 2,000 square foot, 2,200 actually, and next door opened up, so I jumped on that too. So now we're about 3,000 square foot total.
Oh wow!
And yeah, we were 5-6 guys, and we got CNCs, and you know, we got a high-speed balancer now, and well, I had that for a while, but yeah, it's been every year we just keep growing and getting out there with the social media and listening. One thing I recommend for guys that want to start their own thing is listen to Do It for a Living. It's a great podcast, and it's exactly the title. It's like doing it for a living. It's only car related. Huh. So these guys started, that was my kind of college, university degree to business, you know, because they don't just talk about like the good, they talk about the bad stuff too, and like. Right. And this industry too, with the internet, like you get scammed a lot, so you got to be really vigilant on the internet and guys out there. And yeah, it's quite the bracket to be in because you're playing with things that spin 100,000 RPM and everything's throwing into it, like hot side, cold side, and there could be a lot of times something wrong with the engine or the user, and you always blame the turbo kind of thing, right? So yeah, there's a lot of things to like, and then we end up playing the mechanic to help them diagnose the car, you know. So it's not just turbos, and then you play with this different recipes and stuff. But yeah, sorry, back to your question.
No, you're good.
Yeah, that's how I got started, and then just put in hours. Like today, it's Saturday. I came in this morning 8 o'clock, started working on the cars because I don't have time during the week, and yeah, I got a really good partner that allows me to be what I can be for the business and my employees too. I got a lot of guys that have been here for like 2-3 years, and yeah, but good bunch of guys all have their good expertise, and then good colleagues and getting good mentors and stuff, right? Like the real recognize the real, and when you have questions or need parts, you help out each other. But coming up was hard because a lot of guys didn't want me to come up, so I had a hard time to, you know, they would not put me down, but they would, some of them would put me down in the area just to kind of make sure I didn't steal the business, and some of the guys would sell me parts and stuff, and now they're coming to me for the parts and for me for the advice. So yeah, it's pretty cool in that sense. Yeah, we just want to keep doing it.
Absolutely, I love that story. That's awesome to start out in a shipping or in a storage container storage facility and make your way to where you are now. That's amazing.
Yeah, one storage, two storage, and then I was stealing power from the plug outside with extension cord, and then it's like, you got to start somewhere. You can't start all out right away, right?
Right, for sure.
And everything you make back in the business, and now I came full circle because I bought another 2G like 2-3 years ago. So I bought it back. Like boom, here we go again. You know,
back in the game.
Yeah.
So, Nick, let's talk about the products and services that Turbo Parts Canada offers, even though we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I want to go more in detail.
Yeah, a lot of OEM turbo rebuilds. I'll start with that, the basic. We do just like your daily commuter cars. There's been a lot, I guess, the transition and wastegate setups has been like 02, I'll say, just to throw a number out there. That went from pressure activated to vacuum actuated. And the vacuum is like a different dynamic in the wastegate flap, and that gives it the rattle. So the N54s were kind of like the first ones that came out that had the rattle. Now the Mercedes, the BMWs are just kind of famous for that. And the reason they're doing vacuum is that the vacuum is way stronger than the pressure actuator for some reason. Like the pump, yeah, like there's almost no spring in the vacuum. You can just pull it with your fingers. But the pump itself will hold way more pressure than a pressure actuator and more boost. And that being said, if there's anything wrong with the engine, because with the vacuum, the flap starts open. It's not closed. Pressure, the flap starts closed. So with the flap being open and then it travels way more than the pressure actuator, I'm guessing, and then like I'm saying, the physics and the dynamics, it just kind of, the bushings wear out and then they rattle. So with the vacuum, let's say there's something wrong with the turbo or the engine, it's stuck open, so you could run no boost and it will save the engine, per se. Versus if something goes wrong with the pressure, the flaps close, you get all the boost and blow everything up, right? So, that being said, we do a lot of wastegate repairs, where we have a little section in the shop, just the machine bushings and press them in. Yeah, so we do like the Audis, we do a lot, Volkswagen, do a lot. They seize up, sometimes the clearances are too tight from factory and it seize up. So yeah, that's kind of I guess the service is a wastegate repair. Before that was an OEM rebuild, and then we jump into performance. We can, like 90% of the performance turbos we can do. There's always that 10% of like the parts are just weird or whatnot. But for those turbos, a lot of times we could, let's say the compressor wheel comes in all beat up, we can machine it out and put a bigger wheel to save the turbo, and then on the same time, like you save your turbo and you get an upgrade.
Yeah.
So that's like that, like the Turbonetics or the half journal bearing, half ball bearing. Those ones we can do. There's a couple brands I won't mention that we use OEM parts, so we can't rebuild those. So we're getting good at knowing like which ones we can and can't. And there's a lot of like in the N54 games, a lot of guys do weird shit and. Yeah, so, but besides that, like PTE, Garrett, Force Performance, Blouch can be touchy, but all those net brands, like whole sets, like anything, there's not much that we don't touch, and we got maybe, I don't know how many turbos in stock, but like parts-wise, I don't know, I don't know how to gauge that, but we got over 1,000 parts in stock, so like ready to build, right? We try to keep it here for turnaround times to be short, like sometimes a good standard rebuild for us like 2-3 days, and if it gets into machine work, it's like 2-3 weeks when we're on top of things. Not on top of things, but when the workload isn't great, overloaded per se, because we have two machines, so we can't just whatever that produces is what it produces kind of thing. We're working on getting a third lathe, CNC lathe. Services. So. Rebuild, bushings, performance, and we have our own branded turbos that we build in-house. So talking about branded turbos, for the ESMs, we have supercores. It's not on the website, but we have supercores that drop in to replace the FP red, green, black. So right now we're putting the new G-Series compressor wheels on the MHI center section. So MHI is a Mitsubishi cartridge, which is what FP uses,
right.
And so yeah, we have like a 770 that's 57/50 by 71, and then we have the 900 G30 900, which is a 62 by 76. So the 900, it kind of replaces the 3076, and then the 770 kind of replaces the 3071, and it's like kind of an upgrade for both. So yeah, Garrett nailed it for the G series. The Gen 2 GTX there, that was, to me, it was like the worst wheel ever, and it was probably a setup for the G series, maybe not on purpose, but yeah, G series to me is where it's at. And then we have these Zona-inspired turbine wheels, which are drop-in the 06H, like we talked about. So that's a 5+5 turbine head, and we're the only one that's the opposite right now. So again, that drops in all the FP blacks, FP reds, greens, anything that has an 06H turbine head, which is very common. So we're the only ones that offer that in the Evo X turbos, and we're the only one that offers the G series compressor wheels in the Evo X turbos. And those are bolt on. They haven't, like, there's not like that much out there right now because it just came out. But the guys that do have it are doing great. Like a guy last week or 2 weeks ago did 600 on the VD graph for with the GTR spec, and that was stock cams, stock long block, tuned by Chag. Chag Tune is really, he's the call him the stock block whisperer.
Yeah.
Ramps it up nice and easy and gives it beans up top, and it's a good motor. It holds, and the customer wants it and he wants it, and yeah, so it's been proven. There's the Evo X turbine housings. They can't go bigger than the 58 mil turbine because the casting isn't thick enough.
Wow.
So we're working on getting a thicker casting to be able to put that 62 mil turbine wheel in there. And yeah, Evo X, that's pretty solid setup. The twin squirrel, 12 centimeter hot side. The Evo 9's got a 10 centimeter hot side, 10.5. So that's why the Evo X does so well with the stock turbo. And while around talking about Evo X and exhaust and things like that, I've seen a handful of times, many times, like customers call us, hey, it's not making boost or it's boost creeping and whatnot. And all the time, it's always like, I don't want to name a brand specifically, but it's a couple, like it's a 3-letter brand, I'll say that. There's a couple out there. And their flanges are bigger than the turbo. So the wastegate flap, when it opens, the arm, it hits or like slides on the flange. So then it boost creep or it gets stuck there and it doesn't make boost, right? And yeah, it's a quick fix every time. But yeah, just for the guys listening, if that happens to you, check and you have a downpipe, aftermarket downpipe, check that. Like put air in your actuator, make it open and close, and look at that arm. Make sure it's not touching on the outside or the inside. Sometimes guys have to grind on the inside because the flap will kind of.
Man.
But no, the inside, you know what? The inside, like, it doesn't protrude with the actuator on there. So I'm pretty sure all the time was outside.
Oh. That's a weird problem to have.
Yeah. It's at first like, okay, it's the one time, and then over and over again. Like, you ask Chag, like, we've dealt with that a couple times, and yeah. So anybody that's got issues, we take care of. We're not here to run away and, oh no, it's not us, boom, hang up the phone. Like, I got guys with morals here, like, if it'd be like that, they wouldn't be here. So we got a full-time guy on the phone shipping, and we're here to make sure everyone's got a good experience, and, we're all treated fairly.
Definitely. Our community is unforgiving when it comes to stuff like that, so.
Yeah, and especially when you're up and coming, I noticed too, I try not to spend time, not spend time on social media that much and not get, how should I say, take it, not serious, but, I don't know how to say it, but, yeah, when you're up and coming, the cancel culture is huge, and, and the guys, customers, sometimes they think like they're owed everything, and sometimes it's like, you know what, man, like, if you're going to be a dick with me, I'll be a dick with you, and
right.
And over nothing, and then they just go out and try to cancel you. But if you're a big shop, they don't do that. But when you're small, they kind of like, oh, I'm more likely to kind of win this, and they kind of So yeah, it's tough. It's tough for businesses, and you know what? You just one sour apple. You don't stop, and you keep pumping out good products and compare the good ones, and keep at it.
So Nick, I wanted to talk about my options for upgrading my bolt-on turbo. I know you talked about the different wheels and the different shafts that we could go with. I wanted to talk about like specifically what the most popular bolt-on turbo we'll say is 16G. What can I do with my 16G that would make it better than it came from the factory?
16G, we're talking, it's wicked turbo. It's out unit, but it's just that's pretty old stuff. And even like everybody wants to go big now. Like even if there's lag involved, it's just once you experience it, you're just like, wow, it's hard to go back down after, even though there's a shit ton of lag. But yeah, 16G, that's kind of an easy one if it's like a real Evo 3 cast wheel. Even the cast design got upgraded back in the day. It was like it's the body of the wheel, the girth. So with the billet wheels, the girth is actually like half the size. So even though the extruder and inducer doesn't change, because the body is thinner, the blade is actually physically wider. And a lot of people have the misconception that billet wheels spool faster. That's a total lie. Like all my upgrades, I've done like one at a time to make sure that like just for data, proper data and proper knowledge of the stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason, even though the billet wheel will weigh less than a cast, but sometimes that's not true either. The billet wheel is more dense. That's being more dense, it's stronger. That's why you can have the smaller girth, because it's stronger and more dense, so that's heavier than a cast. And it depends on the model. It goes both ways. I've seen, so that's not conclusive, but generally speaking, the billet wheel will spool later because you're pushing more air. So you have more resistance. It's like a paddle. I always say the paddle in the water. Like let's say when you're canoeing and stuff, you have a small paddle. Like you're moving that paddle no problem, but you're not going fast because you're not moving a lot of volume, right? Yeah. Density or whatever. So when you put a big paddle, it's like whoa. It's like you're struggling to get it going, but once it's going, it's fucking going, right? Excuse my language. And so same thing with the billet wheel. You put it on, it's like you're like maybe 100 RPMs later, but when it kicks in, right? Like I'm not saying cast is better, but if you want faster spool, it's not the compressor wheel, the billet wheel that's going to get you faster spool. Is it still worth it? 100%. Like just the difference in sound, the billet wheel is worth the money. Like if it would just be the sound and the same performance, like it whistles that much more. So I'm just talking back on the 16G, right? This is all pertaining to that. What really helps spool is the turbine wheel. So a lot of turbine heads, I'm not taking a shot at anybody, but the guys that use the standard TD06H turbine, they're heavy. They're more robust, so they will, outlast, let's say, not outlast, but take more abuse sometimes. But it's like 200 RPMs in spool of sacrifice. So it's like, that's a lot, right? And a lot of people, like me personally, I'll take the chance on reliability a little bit for that 200 RPM spool. That's like, I could have won, I don't know how many races for that, right? So 16G, I mean, you slap a 9-blade and a billet wheel and it wakes up. Like my first DSM was a 16G and I did a 20G upgrade. That's probably the best. You keep the TD05, put a 20G compressor wheel in there, machine it out. And I didn't have cams back in the day, but for street cars, that TD05 20G with 272s or something, that would have been a fucking wicked street car.
Yeah. Even today.
I mean, just what's that?
Even today, that's a killer setup.
Yeah. It's like it's simple. Like everything, all your shit holds together, and you don't need huge injectors, huge pump, and this and that. But a lot of people are like, they want a turbo that's maxed out all the time. They're like, what does the turbo make at 35? What does the turbo make at 35? Because that's when you do that, you get the best spool for the best power, versus like one turbo to make, let's say, 600 at 35 versus a bigger one that makes 600 at 25 because it's bigger PSI, right? Because PSI is just a pressure. It's not a volume. It's not a flow. Like a 16G can make 25 psi, and a GT40 can make 25. But the 40s will outflow the 16G like by a lot. So what I'm getting at is that I would like that people. It would be a good idea to not run a turbo maxed out all the time. You know what I mean? And just run a turbo that can run 45, but run at 35. And if you want to run at 45, get a turbo that's rated for 55. You know, so not everything's maxed out. Like, you know, injectors freaking are pinned open, the turbo's pinned open, like timing's fucking 18 degrees. You know, it's your setup. Don't get me wrong, but as a turbo builder, like, I recommend upping your turbo, like, a little bit bigger, so it kind of survives and doesn't. You're not doing a bunch of heat.
Right.
And that brings me to another conclusion. Is a lot of guys, they really get too hung up on the 6 or 7 blade compressor wheels and things like that, which is like, that's just, there's like 10, 20 different points on a compressor wheel, and they get so hung up on that. And they're like, oh, which one's more efficient, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then they put in the car, and then they have like a 90-degree bend, 490-degree bends right on their intercooler setup. It's like, dude, man, like, you spend a year picking your compressor wheel, and then that's your intercooler setup? Like, or they just get hung up on the compressor maps. Like, hey, you have a compressor map, you have a compressor map. And then, so like, the compressor map is not based off your intercooler setup. It's not like, it's, compressor map is like, it's a standard on a machine, a flow machine, that's just, it's a standard. There's no intercooler, there's no piping and shit like that. So as soon as you put in your car, you can run at the same boost as it was on that test, and it's not the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like, so it's like PTE doesn't have compressor maps, you know? So you put in the car, you run it, and you see what it makes on your setup, and then it's not like the real racer. No, it's not all the turbo, the intercooler, it's the piping.
Right.
Like, I was in construction for a little while, and I learned that in HVAC, like a 6-inch duct, a 90-degree bend, each 90-degree bend in the HVAC system in the house adds 6 feet.
Oh, wow.
As in, like, linear. Yeah, so when you put that analogy in a car, it's like, it's huge. You know? And then, like, you talk about intercoolers with pressure drops, like, you have 30 psi going in, but 25 going out, right? That's a shitty cooler. And so you really, guys, I think, should spend more time on the entire setup versus just a turbo and then have a shit setup after, right?
Right. Have a 90-degree going into the throttle body.
Yeah, and you know, like, you can have like a 90, like a nice big 90, right? Like, when you have to just be mindful of what it is. Like the factory, shit, I'm bad with names. Speed Factory Civic, the Honda, when it came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the turbo was right dead center, and you look at the setup, there's like no 90s. It's all like the exhaust manifold straight out, almost straight back in the intake manifold. I'm like, dude, that's gonna win. Like, right away, I just knew. Like, I didn't even know that car was fast before, but it wasn't as fast as it was per se. And like, he went to switch to the water to air cooler, no bends in the exhaust, turbo right down the middle. To me, has to do a lot to do with the aero. Or else, like, on the side, I mean, when you go on 6.9s, everything matters, right?
For sure,
so,
yeah.
I guess, 16G. All this because of the 16G. Yeah, dude, so 16G, like, we upgrade the thrust bearing, the thrust collar. So a collar is like a washer, and there's 2 collars. Like, when I explain my guides here, it's like, the thrust bearing, there's also a thrust bearing in a crank, like the crank walks and the 4Gs.
Yeah.
That's because, like, the crank thrust, like, fails, because that's an actual in and out. So we upgrade those to, like, a dual oil port, which is pretty standard. Some more oil, like, same pressure and more volume. And then the collars, we go, I'm not sure about the size there, but maybe it's like 6 mil, and then we go to like a 12 mil size collar. So it's like the snowshoe effect. You know, when you walk in the snow, you have your boots and you sink through like thick snow, but when you have snowshoes, you kind of float on top, right?
Right.
And we talked about oil pressure earlier. This is where that comes in too. So you got more pressure and you got the snowshoes, you're like, whoa, dude, you're floating, right? But as soon as you remove the pressure, you sink, right? So oil pressure, upgraded collars and stuff. A lot of guys in like let's say the Audi world, they have like the thrust bearings. They're webbed, and we have upgraded 360s and like triple oils, feed and whatnot. So these guys, they get a stock car, they put a tune in it, and boom, they just start popping turbos, right? Because they have all stock components. Like the stock components in the stock car is designed for stock boost, right? So, and back pressure plays a big role. So a lot of guys, they put a tune on, and that's why with the tunes, the off-the-shelf tunes say, hey, you need exhaust. Because like you need the flow, and if they don't do that and they get off the shelf tune, and all the back pressures pushing against the turbine, pushing into the thrust bearing, and then get a failure that way, right? And so it's all a turbo is all a balance of back pressure and like the back pressure and the compressor side pressure. Like it's two different chambers pushing on the wheels like against each other. So like. And that's good. I mean, good and bad. I mean, that affects the reliability of the thrust bearing because, each pressure is pushing against each other. So let's say you have 3-to-1 back pressure versus the compressor side, and it's going to eat the thrust. So there's that reason. And then the other reason is burning oil. A lot of guys are like, oh, turbo smoking, blah, blah, blah. Well, if your back pressure is too high, because the piston rings are like, there's these upgraded step gaps, they're like a brick interlocks and stuff, like they're really good. But it's not an O-ring, so there's a shoulder on everything. Like you'll put a standard turbo straight up on its backside, let's say, facing the ceiling, and a couple of days you'll have oil coming out of the turbine. And it's not a bad turbo. It's just the oil that's in the turbo, like eventually leaks out because it's not O-ring, right? It's not a perfect seal. So that being said, it's the back pressure, the turbine housing is going to push within the cavity of the cartridge, CHRA, and the compressor side is going to do the same. It's going to push a little bit of air inside the turbo. And then your crankcase pressure that's going up the oil drain, people have a hard time picturing that, but you have crankcase going up the oil drain, and that should all have, it all plays a factor with each other. As soon as that becomes out of balance, then you'll start getting oil in your intercooler pipe. You get oil in your hot side. You're smoking and things like that. So, like sometimes it's a bad turbo, but don't get me wrong. But it's just that all plays. It's actually freaking rocket science sometimes,
Oh yeah.
And it's pretty.
Those clearances are so minute, and you got to factor in. Obviously metal expands when it's hot. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's tolerances and wears that you can barely see with your eye, but that's gonna leak, man.
Right.
And that's why I don't sell rebuild kits and turbine wheels and compressor wheels because the one time I'm like, okay, I'll sell it for this guy, he's local, whatever. Hey, blah blah blah, your shit's smoking, blah, your bad piston ring. It's like, oh man, I'm done.
Right.
Because it's just you don't know, right? And some people make it sound so easy, and our prices sometimes for rebuilds seem higher because we change more components and to make sure you get a better end product, right? So yeah.
Well, Nick, I also wanted to make sure that people were aware that not only can you upgrade my 16G, but you could also take my 16G and just rebuild it as a 16G.
Yeah, 100%. We could do that. Let's say you're just smoking a little bit, you don't want downtime, we could send you a cartridge too and show you how to install the cartridge in your existing housing. That is a little bit tricky because metal does expand, does corrode, so we always recommend to have the turbo here because we have torches, we have the expertise to take it apart without damaging things. Yeah, for sure. And your 16G per se, we could reuse the hot side, the cartridge, and put a 3-inch cover on it and upgrade the compressor wheels. And then you have a 3-inch intake, right? So more air goes in, the better it is. And so we could play with everything. The 16G, it's nice because it's internally gated, and you got the J pipe up top. So if you have that set up, you want to stay like that, sure. But if you want to go external, slap a 3-inch external wastegate off the O2 housing and 3-inch FP intake or whatnot. And so there's a lot, everything we could do for anything, pretty much. Like right now, I'm staring at a bunch of GTR turbos. I got Bentleys right here, got the McLarens there, the Porsches, like Hyundai, like the Veloster guys are getting out there, man. Veloster guys, they're I don't know how fast they go, but they're making 300 some with these bolt-on units. So,
wow.
So you might surprise a few guys out there. What else am I looking at? AMGs, like the M157s, 278, 275s. I got Evo 9 here, like a Garrett. Those are the worst, Evo 9 Garretts. They're the worst to work on. We just made a TPC 900, which is like a G30 900 setup in a Subaru, bolt-on Subaru. So yeah, the G, and I was talking earlier about the Zona style turbine head and the 06H drop-in. So what we did, we took that head and made it to the GT30 and the G30 shafts. So what that means is that we bridge the gap between the GT30 and the GT35, like wheels bands. So the GT30 is 55 mil, and the GT35 is 62 mil, and ours is 58 mil. So people that don't want the lag of a GT35 but want more juice out of their GT30s, we can machine the hot side and just change the hot side and not play with the compressor side.
Wow. So
yeah, that's pretty cool. That just came out. Looking forward to play with those. And so anything like that, we're kind of, visionaries and whatnot, and trying to mix things up and make the best option for bolt-on turbos. So yeah, bolt-ons, I would say, was our specialty. A lot of guys only start with the exhaust and the intake and the headers. The turbos kind of last. And if you do like full T3, then you're like, fuck, you gotta sell all your stuff and fork up like $5,000-$6,000 versus just a setup, the turbo that bolts on, and then you just tune and you're good to go, right? But we have some universal turbos that are coming out, some big T3, T4 V-band ones, which we did do some custom wheels again. Compressor wheel, one of them is Zona-inspired 64 mil, and then we have a G-Series inspired to 64 mil. So they're both within our specs, but with other people's designs per se, not designs, but aero. And we kind of tweak those, and so we'll be testing them this season. Hopefully, Drew and a couple of the guys will get there at the end of the season. We've got some FP30 hot sides that we machine out to GT35s. So if anybody out there that's got those, we can machine those out. Yeah, man, we love turbos.
Guess you got to in your business, huh?
Yeah.
So, Nick, I wanted to talk about, you mentioned someone wanting to avoid the turnaround time. I wanted to talk about the average turnaround time that I could expect to send my turbo to you and get it back.
So right now, like I won't skip the shipping time because that's a main thing. And we have a concierge service that we started to offer this year for shipping. We have great rates, and we know like the ins and outs of shipping. So what we do is like you send us all your information with the size of the box, the weight, and then we send you a label. All you have to do is we'll drop it off at the courier, and then if the shipping comes in, we take care of duties and the customs or whatnot, and we have agents that help us with that. So you'll pay half price for shipping right away and better service. And then we get to it here. Like as soon as it comes in, you guys print out a sheet that we send you. You fill out the form, put it with the box, so we know who it belongs to. We take pictures. We put it in our MSA, which is a software that is provided by the same people that I said that do the podcast for Do It for a Living.
Huh.
So again, I recommend that software, and I recommend that podcast. So we do that, so it helps us keep track. Sometimes guys are like, oh, my turbo had a fitting on. It's like, oh, go back in the pictures. Like, no, it came with no lines and none of this. So yeah, it backs us up, and also sometimes guys have like clock turbos and stuff, and it's weird. So we always have a good database of how it came in and what was wrong with it. And then we have my guy Nick in the back. He dismantles it, cleans it all up. We have a hot tank, sandblasters, and then we have a little measuring bench, clean area. We just check everything, make sure everything's in spec or whatnot, and then it goes to me in the balancing room, assembling room, and we component balance everything, put together high-speed BSR balance, and then put it together, give it back to Paul. Paul takes pictures again, puts it in the MSA, box it up, and it's out on back to the customer.
Wow.
And so that average, like say 2-3 days. If like it's just a 16G plain rebuild, like maybe 2 days, but I'll say 3 days to be safe. And depending, like some of my billet wheels are harder to kind of come by if it's like a weird setup. But I'm staring at about 200 billet wheels right now, so we try to keep all the common ones here. But a lot of times we could speed up the process if the customer gives us a heads up first, takes pictures, like, hey, this is what's wrong, this is what the turbo is, and whatnot. And Paul always knows like the lead time, so he get a pretty accurate lead time. And,
okay.
Yeah, we're here. A lot of other guys, man, they're like, they do this on the side and they have other jobs, so I'm sure they get busy and their timelines get back. But this is what we do full time, just turbos. So 5 guys. So
awesome.
Pump them out.
You touched on it a little bit, so I want to go back and talk about what you were saying, the future of Turbo Parts Canada and what you see as far as, you talked about new turbos coming out, the T3 variants and universal turbos. But what about, do you see any other products and services besides those that you plan to roll out here in the future?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because, like I said, next door we just took up that extra space. We just started a fab division. So we do anything from trailer repairs, like we did some mounts for an airplane for the skis last week, exhaust, intercoolers, whatnot. We're getting lifts soon. So we will be going full tilt in the fab division. And also, I got a really nice product I can't wait to work on. We have everything to get ready and up and going. It's exhaust shielding, and it's like the stainless wrap that goes over top of insulation. The header wrap that you put on, the titanium wrap?
Yeah.
It always flakes. It always, like, you're all itchy, and it soaks up with oil. Like, it lasts a season or two, and like it's done again.
Right.
So what we do, and what we're gonna do, is the same style of wrap. It's not the same wrap, but we wrap the exhaust components, and we have other products that's gonna cover the firewalls or cover your oil pan and things like that. Anything that's close to the exhaust, it will reflect the heat. It's like the DSM. Your exhaust goes right beside the oil pan underneath, so you can wrap the exhaust. Well, it's a send-in service. You send in your parts, and we're gonna offer the service. So I saw a video this morning. The guy had a laser heat gun to the titanium wrap. It was maybe like 300 degrees, 400 degrees. It was almost glowing red too. And he goes right beside it to this new shielding, and it was like 70 degrees, 80 degrees. So it's a huge drop, and it lasts. It looks good. Yeah. It's not cheap. Don't get me wrong. It's gonna maybe cost as much as the header does, but for motorsports application, when you're risking of melting a wiring harness that's $3,000 and you're down for the weekend, it pays dividends.
Not just
that,
but avoiding heat soak altogether. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. So it's been up and coming for the past few years, and it's really hard to figure out and what to do. So right now we're testing. We've got old manifolds to tack this thing on, and we got picking up some mentors too from overseas, from like Germany is pretty big, this stuff. And so I'm looking to come out right now. We're February, so hoping March, April we get a full line of samples to show out and roll out and offer the service. That's pretty exciting for me because, like I said, I was in construction before, and I like really believe in this product and it works. So it's like, it's great. And it goes well with turbos. They're kind of the same industry.
Yeah. Not to mention those exhaust wraps never look good.
Oh, I hate them, dude. Just so itchy, and it just like you try this cheap stuff, try the good stuff, and it ends up being the same. And they have the blankets too. They work the blankets depending on the brand,
right?
But this stuff looks awesome. So I've seen some guys there, like I said, Germany. They have like the purple, the green. And,
oh wow.
Yeah. I probably won't get that fancy right away, but right now it's just it's stainless looking stuff, and it's rippled. So we have the heat blankets per se coming in, and we'll make some reels and show how it's made, and start offering that service soon.
Let's check that out.
For sure.
So, Nick, I wanted to talk about, you kind of mentioned it earlier about someone not wanting to upgrade their exhaust manifold and how expensive that can get real quick. So I wanted to talk about if I was a customer and I was reaching out to you, let's say I have a Evo 10, and I just want some more power without, upgrading my exhaust manifold. What advice would you give me as far as what I should be looking for and what you could provide me with a bolt-on turbo option?
So bolt-on turbo, bolt-on the stock location. So whether you want to run a factory manifold or not, that's up to you. You just want to see the full potential of your setup. And Evo X, I think they're like cracking a lot, I believe. Who was it? MAP, that makes a great one, but they're just as much as a tubular one now. Like they have in the market. Nobody else has anything like below that, which is, I don't know, maybe there's another casting company that's out there that's making some. I think Artec is making a lot. But there's a huge hole in the market there. Because it's like $1,000 or $1,200 for a MAP cast manifold. So and that's tubular style. Is it worth it? Yes, 100%. Like I had customers with bad experiences though with the exhaust runners being too big and adding so much lag that didn't it kind of slowed the car down for lapping and stuff. So you still want something that's small or whatnot. But like I had my first 2G was stock exhaust manifold. Like I think Drew had a stock style exhaust manifold on for a while, and he still make power. It just heats up and whatnot. But if it doesn't crack and you're on a budget and you can only afford it, you do what you got to do, right? Like I put money on the downpipe and exhaust before the exhaust manifold. So it's hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's I look at how much Evo 10 costs, and I think, like, man, if I want some more power out of it, not only do I have a $50,000 car sometimes, but now I also have to spend thousands of dollars on an exhaust manifold. Whereas you have the bolt-on options that could save me a ton of money, and but like you said, maybe the manifold needs to be replaced.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to be unless it's all cracked up. If you want to need and want or whatever, but if you have a goal of 600 and then like you're not making it with that, then like you need to have it to make your goal. Yeah. Yes. And just you can buy a lot of good stuff used nowadays too. So that's true. Like I bought all my stuff for my DSM, and my rule of thumb is I pay half price for used stuff.
Yeah. And
so that's pretty good. And like I bought a JMF intake manifold, JMF exhaust manifold, and they're not cracked. All the welds are good, because you get eBay stuff. A lot of people buy the cheap shit.
Right.
Then it's cheap right off the bat, but when you go to sell it, you also have nothing. There's no value to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like a used eBay, right? But when you buy quality stuff new, you still have value when you go to sell because it's still in good condition usually, right?
And especially, when it comes to hot side exhaust or hot side stuff from eBay, you're not thinking of if it's cracked. You're thinking of when it will crack.
Yeah, and they warp and this and that, right?
Yep.
While we're talking about cracks and stuff, like exhaust housings and turbos, they often crack, and I would advise, I guess, people to not jump to conclusions. It's like a crack in a foundation. Like everybody has a crack in a foundation. It doesn't mean the house is crumbling. There is some that are worse than others. Don't get me wrong, right? Like all the Garrett. I'm not taking a shot at Garrett, but all the Evo 10 and the Evo 9 Garrett housings, they all crack because they're twin scrolls. When there's twin scroll, like wastegate opening or a twin scroll housing, all the exhaust flow is divided in two, and the heat goes up drastically because everything's more pressure, right?
Right.
And they got to exit these little holes now instead of one big one, so everything gets a lot of heat. So it's to be expected that things are going to crack. You guys are running 35 psi at a freaking full tilt for a whole season. It's like, hey, I got a hairline crack. It's like, yeah, man, it's normal and it's okay. Like, did you notice it? Like, did the power go down? Like, your wastegate duty, did it jump 15%? No, then it's fine. And it's to be expected. But like I said, there's some that are huge and some that are not, right? Like, because like if I would say our cracks are bad, then all these Evo 10 Garrett turbos out there, they're no good. But that's not the fact. Like the divider is thick enough that they're not gonna snap off.
Yeah.
Right. And while we're an Evo 10 subject, like there's 2 chambers in the hot side. There's like a wastegate and then the turbine one. There's a thin divider inside, and often like 80% of the turbos out there, they'll crack with like that little divider inside the turbo.
Oh wow!
It'll get cracked, but it just goes from one chamber to the other, which joins in the downpipe anyways.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just you just really got to be good at analyzing and not jump to conclusions and not panic per se. You know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that side of the twin scroll. I mean, everybody talks about all the upsides. I guess they don't talk about the potential downsides.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like there's every plus has a negative, I guess, or every plus has a flaw,
right?
A design flaw. But it's just that's the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And like these GTR, I'm looking at GTR turbo right now, and they all crack at the wastegate there, but they all make. They all machine this out and pump it out, and it'll make 1,100 horse, right? It's not
1,100 horse and no sweat.
Yeah. GTR is another beast, man. Those are badass. But turbo side, like I'm amazed by it, and those in the GTIs and the Golf Rs and stuff. But the rest to make it go there is like a whole other story. But yeah.
So, Nick, I wanted to shift gears a little bit. I wanted to talk about your background in Mitsubishi cars because, like you said, you started with a 98 Talon, and you're building another 2G right now. So let's talk about those cars for a while.
So my first car was a 91 Laser in high school, and it was a nightmare, to be honest. And I don't know why. I guess so. The irony behind that is that I was kind of bummed out with cars back then. I had that and another car that I had issues with, and I was like, man, fuck these cars, they just cost so much money, blah blah blah. Like I never thought I could do it for a living, kind of thing, And but when if you're on the other side of it, like mechanic or parts or these turbos, and it's like now I could do what I love, play with cars, and I'm still like I'm doing all these events. I sponsor cars. I get to I'm loving it, right? It's great. But yeah, 91 Laser in high school. So back then it was fast for what it was. The stock, it was an NA, to be honest. I was 16, 17. And, but it was like up there, like with my buddies' cars and shit. So it was pretty cool. Got rid of that. I had trucks for a while because I was working rigs. Then I got back in the 98 Talon, was a manual. It had a 20G in it. Like I said, no cams earlier. And so that 20G would have been perfect with cams. They kind of died off at 6,500. So I feel like with cams, it would have carried it to 7, and it would have been perfect.
Yeah.
It went like a 12.4, 12.3 on that. On that setup, it was pretty. It was good back then, right? And now, so yeah, I sold that, bought the balancer, and I got another 2G. But I've had maybe like 20 sets of cams and never installed them in the car. Cause I just buy stuff and resell, buy stuff, resell. I'm always at the marketplace, always on Kijiji. Like Kijiji is big in Canada, so. And I always pick up not working Talons and part them out and keep the parts that I want or whatnot, and always about not making the sport drain me per se. So I've parted out more cars that I've owned, and now yes, I do have another. So I have a 97 and a 98 Talon again. They're both green. One is like as a backup shell in case I mash up this one. Like it's just because I bought it in pieces. A lot of guys they put their Talons in pieces. I guess they want to have big hopes and dreams, and then they don't put them back together. It gets too much work, and then they just sell them to. Yeah, so that's what I did with that one. So it's parked out back, and the other one it was a manual. I did shop around a lot for an auto because I want to go auto, so it's softer on the launches on the drivetrain, and there was just nothing available. So I said, screw it, I'll need to switch this one to auto, which is a big process, as in tracking down parts. And so now she's full auto. I got a built trans ready to go in, and I had a position torque converter. I got the boost and TKs getting made. I got the ESS aluminum drive shaft and all the goodies. I switched to fuel tech. So yeah, last year I made the guys out there with a 2G. Like, I'm big on a clean engine bay. And I really wanted to switch and relocate my my fuse box in the engine bay. And then I found out, like, there's a harness up in the bumper, it goes out the fender, and then went to the firewall, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just get rid of, I got rid of the AC, the ABS, and I think I did a bobo somewhere, boo-boo, and it wouldn't start last year. I could run on 3 cylinders, so went through everything and just switched ECUs, so figured out, I hope it's the freaking harness that we change out the fuel tech, so now I got a fuel tech. And she's got it, and she's ready to kind of get tuned to just get torn down again.
Yeah.
You know? But, yeah, it's a passion and whatnot. In the meantime, she's sitting. We're doing upgrades. And so that one we're going to be testing. I'm actually going to put an FP black on it, and I'm just going to, get it dialed in as quick as possible. And then I'm going to do that 62-millimeter turbine upgrade we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm going to, get data on that. And then switch to the next turbo. We're just I'll probably jump to the T3. Like I said, I have the JMS manifold here, so we start testing T3 turbos. And, so that's just all about testing. I have another GTI here. It's a track car for lapping, and I throw maybe 6-7 turbos on that thing we go to dyno, test it out, and pump out numbers, and there's our product. You know, sometimes it doesn't work. And, okay, that combo didn't work. We're going to switch it up. And over the years, we just gain experience with different combinations, and there's a lot of it to do with the machining techniques.
Right.
And I think that's what sets us different from the rest, is that we have test cars, we've got a dyno down the road, we have our own machining, and it's been a process.
You're not just making the turbos, but you have the ability to make the minute changes to make them even better than the first version.
Yeah, and then we follow the leaders as well. We got Garrett, Zona, FP, and stuff, and see how they're doing and what they're doing, and put our own sauce to it.
Well, you were talking about having this car out and hitting some events with it, Nick. Let's talk about what events that you plan to attend this year that we can either come out and see your car in action or come out and talk to you in person.
So locally, a big cool event is SSPA. It's in Quebec. It's at Naperville. It's ran by Jim and his girlfriend Steph. They kill it. They really organize an awesome event, and it's all the fastest cars from the east of Canada go here. There's a lot of 9s and a lot of 8-second cars, and that's the thing. I'm building this talent, and now all these guys are going to 8s now. But and good bunch of guys, and they're the real OGs, and they're the real dudes. They're a lot of talent. All the talented guys go there. So some Toronto guys come down. It's a far drive. It's 4 or 5 hours, but they have maybe, I'll say, 4 events in the season, and there's no beef, no drama, and there's 2 groups. You kind of got to make it a Group A or Group B, but even the Group Bs are getting super fast, so it's really competitive. A lot of, I'll say, half the cars there maybe you run our turbos. So we sponsor partially some of them, and they do the testing, and I make sure it's even the playing field for all of them, But no, a good bunch of guys. That's the event that I attend with the car. In person, I love World Cup, WCF in Maryland. I love that.
Yeah.
PRI is a great show. So those are kind of back to back, and I haven't been to SEMA yet because those are all at the same time. But I think I'm going to send my manager to SEMA this year and just go check it out. And those I think are the main ones. I haven't done Orlando or Texas 2K yet. But yeah, we have the fastest Hondas that we sponsor in Quebec go to World Cups. That's why we go to World Cup.
Yeah.
They put on a hell of a show, and it was sold out this year.
That was amazing.
Well, yeah. The shootouts. I've been at the shootouts for a while. I've gone once or twice before COVID, and it was great. It was awesome. So maybe this year I'll go if the car's ready and whatnot, or I don't know. Drew, we went together once, and so maybe we'll hit it up again. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Love to see you there, especially for the big 30-year anniversary this year.
Oh, that's right. Cool. That'd be cool.
So, Nick, where can people find you on social media? Where can they, see these cool products, see the cars that are testing them at?
So for social media, it's Turbo Parts Canada. No underscore, nothing. Just Turbo Parts Canada. Same thing for Facebook. We're kind of posting on there. TikTok, we're not on there, but I've heard that there's a lot of tags on us over there. So yeah. I'm sure you'll see a good audience of people with our turbos. We're trying to get a media guy on board here to kind of take care of all that stuff because it does get overwhelming. We want to do more YouTube. All our YouTube is like from 5 years ago, so everything is expired. So we got to do a full week of YouTube to catch people up with their services and available upgrades and whatnot. So hopefully we'll be doing that within the next month or two. So
awesome.
Keep an eye on our YouTube. And besides that, it's just word of mouth and shops. We deal a lot with shops. We offer shop pricing for discounts for them because they buy often enough to kind of make it worthwhile. And we take care of everybody.
Awesome. All right, Nick. So finally, I always give people a chance to give a shout out or a thank you to anybody who's helped them get where they are, help their business get where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to?
Shout outs. I mean, I guess as in the DSM world, Jason Drew has been with me for a while and been beating my turbos up for a while and giving me good data and just a solid dude. So Jason Drew, I'm sure a lot of DSM guys know who he is. He's an OG in my books. He's been around for a while. And Kenny Klein, he's been around for a while. He's had as soon as he got rid of his blue 1G, I think he hopped on with me with his Evos. Yep. And he's been hurting a lot of feelings with his Evos, let's say, with our turbos. So in the Mitsu, those are the first two that popped to mind. There's a lot of guys out there like Chag Tuning. He's big in the Evo X, and we kind of hit it off together early in the game, and he's been great. Another, I forget his name, Michael, a big, crazy last name.
Is it Rosati?
I'm not even going to try to say it. If I could read it, but I can't picture in my mind. He's got a white Evo 10, and he hit 660 with their bolt-on turbo at Dynasty Tuning maybe 4 years ago. That was with their
Hasselbring?
Yeah, him. So yeah, he's a great guy too. He's been running the Zona for a while now and something 700-800 horse. He's going through trannies, but name of the game. But he was a great guy to work with and did great numbers. So shout out to him. Those are the top three that come to mind for stuff like that.
Awesome. All right, Nick. Well, I wanted to say a big thank you for coming on as a site sponsor, man. I really appreciate it. That I get to do so many cool things with so many cool companies. The 15G category was super popular last year. I think we motivated a lot of people to push that turbo. And then the 60 to 130 category that you started for 2023, it's been very popular. I feel like every other day we get a new submission, and people have really been reaching out saying how much they like it. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, man. While we're on the subject for the 15G category, I'd like to offer 10% off for the top three for 2022. They want to upgrade a turbo. They want to step up outside of the stock turbo class. I'll send them a 10% discount. So if you want to send them over my way, and we'll take care of them.
I will do that for sure.
Cool. And the 60 to 130 for sure. That's a new thing. It's easier on the cars, and guys love the roll racing. 60 to 130 is kind of safe. You're by yourself, and you can kind of race each other on the lift. Yeah. Great.
And it's crazy to see. Maybe like you said, people might be scared to go to the drag strip and embarrass themselves in front of people or break something. But you see 6130s from just straight up street cars all the way to race cars. It's a category unlike any of the other ones, I think.
Yeah, it's a new metric that that's respected now, and guys they're in the game for a while or have a fast car. You don't even need a fast car to know what's fast now.
Right.
You know, you just compare other cars, and if you go to Draggy, I guess Draggy page, Draggy Talk, I think it is on Facebook. Everyone's always posting 6130s and there's comments and like their setup. So you it's a good way to gauge cars, and you know what's fast now when you go, like, let's say to the meet or Texas 2K or whatever, and then you know like what should do what kind of say per se. And I think it's a really cool metric and cool device. And it's 100 or 200 in Europe, but it gives you a good idea of the power it has.
For sure. All right, Nick, well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again for coming on and taking the time to share your story. I hope that we can get some more Turbo Parts Canada turbos on some cars for 2023. Like I said, thank you, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Hey, Josh, it's been a pleasure. I know we've been playing tag for a while trying to get this done, but with summer out of the way, now we have a bit of free time, so it was great, and maybe we'll do another one in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.